This is Keys to the Shop, episode 122, How to be a Cash Register Hero. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. I hope you've had an amazing week and are just doing great work in coffee. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about something that will definitely help your cafe really make the specialty experience special, and that is learning really great cash register skills. We're going to be covering 6 key skills to be training in the cash register station, and talking a little bit about why we don't necessarily prioritize this particular place on the coffee bar. And after training in these things, you're going to be a cash register hero, somebody who has the ability to basically save the day when it comes to a coffee service in a cafe. So stick with us today. This is going to be a good one. This episode of Keys to the Shop is brought to you by Prima Coffee. So Prima Coffee is a leading specialty coffee equipment supplier who curates the best equipment from around the world to fit perfectly with the needs of both their enthusiast and their professional customers. So helping you succeed in making great coffee at home or in the shop is what drives them. And if you're looking for the best equipment and expert assistance with that equipment, then look no further than prima-coffee.com. And, right now is a great time to check them out, since all Prima customers can save $15 off orders $99 or more with the code 15green. That's the number 15 green. Some exclusions do apply. Now, if you want to be updated about the best deals, then I encourage you to sign up for Prima's Deals newsletter at prima-coffee.com/deals. You're going to gain early access to their Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals. Those are in full swing right now. So I would encourage you go to prima-coffee.com/deals, get that newsletter, that deals newsletter, and check them out. See what they can do to help outfit your coffee journey with the perfect equipment for your situation. Thank you very much, Prima, for your support of the show. And this episode is also brought to you by Pacific Foods. They are, of course, the people behind the Barista series line of non-dairy performance beverages that are designed specifically for professional baristas and the standards for excellence that they demand from their products. So whether that's almond, soy, rice, coconut, or oat milk, its ability to take the heat from steaming, produce an unmatched silky texture, and keep the flavor balance focused on coffee, that makes it a perfect choice for your cafe's menu. Now, Pacific is, as you'll see when you look into their involvement in the industry, a huge supporter of specialty coffee in the barista community. These products are just one way that they do that so well. I would encourage you, go to pacificfoods.com. Learn more about the Barista series line of non-dairy performance beverages and see how adding these to your lineup in your cafe can really elevate the non-dairy offerings that you give your customers. So thank you very much, Pacific, for your support of Keys to the Shop. All right, so today we're going to be talking about being a cash register hero. Specifically, we're going to be talking about skills that we need to be focusing on in order to work the cash register well. And that, of course, goes beyond the ability to do math well. We're dealing with interactions with the public, and we are the first face that people see when you come into the cafe, oftentimes, depending on how your bar is set up. The rest of the entire shift is set up by the experience people have at the register. So the role of cash register, though, I think is much maligned. It's repetition, there's task switching, there's unknowns, there's the human element, of course, and it's one of the more emotionally taxing places to be on the bar, if not the most emotionally taxing place to be. So we like to gravitate toward the espresso machine to escape from that, because we don't see the relevance of working the cash register in barista work as much as we do machine work. We can see this not just by studying our own attitudes about it, but also our practices in the cafe. Who gets the most training in the cafe? That would be the espresso station. People using the espresso machine to create the beverages They get 80, 90% of what there is to be trained on is trained in that station. Where do people go to hack it out mostly on their own with minimal training? That's the register. That's the place where new people go. There's some training in order for you to learn modifiers, where the discount codes are, where the buttons are, all that stuff. And then when you're at a workable place and you feel kind of comfortable and the manager hears kind of a half-hearted yes to a question of how do you feel? Do you feel ready? Then we kind of call victory, maybe a little too soon, because we all know, and we've all been there, where you start a job and you pretty much spend half your time looking over your shoulder asking people about things that you weren't necessarily trained for. And part of this is just because working in the coffee bar, if you're not working directly with coffee, it just doesn't capture your attention. And management and ownership can sometimes funnel all of the care and the tension and training on nuance to those things involving milk and espresso. But the station where a lot of the experience is set up, that the register atrophies for lack of attention and use. So this is a problem, because when your business depends on how people are treated and how people are experiencing the people who represent you, when they do a poor job, sometimes as a fault of their own, and a lot of times as a fault of lack of training and attention, then people get a bad impression, okay? If it's not a good experience at the register, chances are it's going to be a less than great experience overall, because that's the first impression. If it's a good and robust experience at the register, then it sets up the drinks and the enjoyment part for success. It sets up the rest of this whole specialty coffee shop visit for success. And that's not just talking about how the customer interacts with the cash register. That's also how the baristas who are making the drinks and everybody else who is essentially snapped into action by a ticket coming out of a printer or a cup landing on the bar with writing on it, how they are able to either succeed or not succeed based on how well the barista at the cash register is doing their job. There's all sorts of things that can fall by the wayside if they're not handled right at the register, and the rest of the crew is kind of left to pick up the pieces. So all this to say, we in specialty coffee shops, we need to provide a specialty experience first at the register. And in order to do that, we need to first address managers and owners, people who have the ability to change policy, to determine what money gets spent where, what words get put into manuals. So you have to look at this place at the register as probably the most important of the cafe. And if you thought that your business depended on the success of this position, then you would concentrate a lot of effort into training the baristas in the nuances of working that cash register. That's the first thing to really reflect on, is looking at your manual, looking at your practices and training. Are you forgetting about the cash register? And in so doing, by not giving it the attention it needs, are you communicating to baristas that it's not an important position? This is a great question to ask yourself. And I would hope that you arrive at the conclusion that we need to focus on the contingencies, the frequently asked questions, how to handle customer complaints, how to communicate with baristas, etc., in the kitchen. There's so many things, and we're going to go over the top 6 here in this episode that you need to put into the manual, that you need to communicate to baristas about, and let them see you value it out loud, in print, and in practice. This is how we develop register skills that match our coffee making skills. So with all of that said, I want to go over what I feel are the top 6 foundational things that happen at the register that need to be trained and put into your manual and put into a training module and trained just like you would for espresso, with practice, with feedback and nuance. So number 1, we're going to go all the way back to episode 45 with our friend Philip Paul Turner over at Sunnergasse Coffee. He's a manager at their 5th Street store downtown. One of the best examples, if not the number one example, of hospitality I know of in coffee. And his mantra for himself and his staff is that you want the customers to be acknowledged, welcomed, and included. Now, it's my opinion that this is everybody's job, of course, but it really does fall on the register to complete this process, to really tie it together. You might not be aware of somebody coming in the door, but the barista is, and in that case, of course, you have to greet the person. You have to acknowledge them. You've got to make them feel welcomed and included in the space because you see them and you're happy to see them. Now, all of that comes together when they're at the register. If you do all of that and it's not followed up by register doing those things, then you don't feel like you're getting this complete hospitality experience. It's easy to try to just move people along in the line and not treat them as individuals. This is a time where making people feel acknowledged, welcomed, and included in your space, that really key component of hospitality, this is the place where a lot of that happens. So that's number one. Train people on how to do that in your cafe. Number two is that you need to be able to answer people's questions about products and policies, prices, all of those things. Now, this means you need to know that people know, not just have them read the menu and then assume that they know. You can test people on if they know the elevation of a particular coffee that's on the offering list. But do we test people on whether they know the prices of things or whether they can name off all of the modifiers that are available for a latte? Typically, we don't do that because all of that is on the screen, and we're so used to the barista hunting and trying to scroll through different menus, all the while giving some kind of small talk to the customer like, well, it's here somewhere. I can never find this button here and all that stuff. And I've totally done that, and sometimes it's really awkward for the customer to just wait there, and it doesn't inspire confidence that the people who are making my coffee know much about even the most basic things of the cafe. So one of the things that you can do to solve this problem is kind of think ahead and put into writing the solutions to problems or questions that customers are going to have, and then have the baristas study that manual of FAQs and study all of the details about the register. One thing that I've done in the past is that you can print all of the screens on the register and give them out as a manual and say, know where these buttons are. What do they mean? Here is a list of modifiers as they appear on the iPad or whatever you use for a POS system. Give it to people so that they can hold it and walk away with it and study it. Give every opportunity to have product knowledge and preparedness in answering questions, and you're going to have a trust built with the customers as they interact with this employee. So not only have they given you a really great experience by making you feel acknowledged and welcomed and included, but they've also shown you that they know their stuff, and that is going to inspire another level of confidence in the customer. So number 3 on the list of 6 things that need to be at the foundation of working the cash register well is communication to customers. Communication not only about what it is that you have, but what it is that they have ordered. Your ability to clearly articulate to them the options, what they mean, how they affect their drink. Somebody says to you something like, I'll have I'll use this Rishi tea, for example, a blueberry rooibos tea, and leave some room for cream. Your mind could either go, okay, fine, I'll do that. And the customer's always right. I'm going to give them what they want. A barista who's paying attention is going to communicate to the customer that their drink will probably curdle because of the berries and the acidity in that tea. Okay? Communication to customers about their beverage, making sure that you get them the drink that they want and that they're going to love. Interpreting what they say from other coffee shops, when they come in, it's the classic caramel macchiato situation. What on your menu most closely matches what they're asking about? We can't just stand there and expect people to say the right words. We are there as translators and guides to a great coffee experience. And we've got to be prepared to communicate to them in such a way that offers them clarity. And we repeat their drink back to them. That's another skill in communication to customers. You repeat the drink back to them so that they know that what they're getting is in the computer, and it's going to come out the other end the way that they ordered it. So we're building them up, and we're communicating in such a way that tells them this is what you can expect. And it eases a lot of the discomfort that comes from standing at the register, which is classic. You know, you got a big menu sometimes, and there's people behind you. You want people to feel comfortable. How you communicate what you say to customers matters a lot. So there's a clarifying aspect to your communication, but there's also a disarming aspect to your communication. There has to be an ease. There has to be a rhythm to the way that you not only hold yourself, but the way you speak that doesn't try to rush them necessarily, but gets things done efficiently in a way that's pleasing. So how you communicate to your customers and what you communicate to them is critical. Now, the next thing, number 4, you have to be able to train somebody on the register to communicate orders properly to the baristas. Do they have clear handwriting? Do they speak up? Are they able to put the tickets in a predictable pattern? Are they paying attention to where they make adjustments on the order if there are things that need to be adjusted? If somebody forgot to get soy and you already put the ticket down that says whole milk, are you going to remember to cross out whole milk and put soy on that drink? Because chances are the barista has already poured the pitcher of milk for that drink because they're thinking ahead. You need to have enough awareness about that to make sure that they're going to do something about that alteration. It's your responsibility to get the customer what they want just as much as it is the barista's. Communication to the barista also requires that you have answers to questions about who ordered what. Oftentimes people are in conversations and they don't hear their drink being called. Now, if you're in a full service cafe, that's great. This still applies though, because the person who ordered the drink is face to face with pretty much just one employee, and that's register. So if anyone's going to know who ordered that 16-ounce mocha, it's going to be register. And we need to be able to train people and train ourselves to remember people's faces, remember their drinks, at least for the short term, at least long enough to be helpful to the other people responsible for fulfilling that order. So that is really critical, communication to baristas. You can also do things like say the drink back to them loud enough that you signal the baristas behind you to start making a drink. Happens all the time. That's how we stay ahead. I'll say, okay, a 16-ounce cold brew to go, and then I'll start typing it in. I'm doing 2 things at once. Customer knows what they're getting. I know there's a barista behind me listening, and they're starting to get the ice for that. This is really a nuance of communicating to baristas. In your shop, in your space, you might have different little things that would be helpful. Chances are your baristas already know what these little things are, because whether you've trained them to do these things or not, the chances are your baristas already know what these little nuances are, because whether or not you've trained them to do it, out of survival, they've adapted. So now it needs to be codified and it needs to be put into practice as an official policy. Another thing with communication to baristas, not relying solely on tickets or cup scribbles to communicate, but speaking in eye contact and having an understood confirmation, like yes, or they repeat the drink back to you. Typically, that's what we do on the bar at Quills, is we'll say the drink and the barista will say it back to us. Sometimes it doesn't happen, sometimes it does. It's just something we do. It's not technically official policy, but it helps a lot. And this brings us to number 5 on the list, and that is to have an empathetic peripheral awareness of what's going on. On register, you need to survey what's going on, not only with customers as they come in, but what's going on the floor, what's going on behind you. You're basically a conductor of this cafe, and it kind of reinforces, again, this notion that the register is such an important place in the coffee bar. Having an awareness of what goes on around you means that you are able to help a lot of people tie up loose ends with their orders, get the orders to the right places, help your fellow staff, and not just isolate yourself to that one particular counter. And that brings us to the final skill that we should be teaching people working the cash register, and that is to pace the line. I can't tell you the number of times that I've seen it in cafes where espresso, the station espresso, gets buried because of an overzealous cash register employee who doesn't really read the room. And all they're doing is putting sauce in cups and pushing cups down the line, and whatever happens on the barista's end is their business. This is a team effort, and sometimes it's not sneaky, it's actually for the good. Register needs to slow things down. I have come up to register before and I've whispered, hey, slow the line down a little bit, compliment their tie or something, like make some chit chat, take a couple extra seconds to give them their change. There's little things that you can do. Prepare the drink a little bit extra for the barista. Restock a pastry while talking to them. Look busy, engage, anchor the conversation with eye contact and smile. These are common things we should be doing at the register, smiling and eye contact, right? Do that, but don't just see how fast you can take an order and move the line down, because a lot of times the anxiety that the register employee feels about a line to the door causes them to want to move that line as quickly as possible, regardless of whether or not that line moves anywhere but 5 feet down. You've got the same number of people now waiting for their drink over by the espresso machine. And that's really not doing anyone any favors. That's way worse, actually, than having a line in front of you, because people really start to count the time it takes for their drink when they get their change back from their order. If they're waiting for their drink, we're used to that. Lines in a shop is something that we do. Okay? It's a model that we have for coffee, and people are used to it. When you get their change back and they've placed their order, that's where time really starts to get warped in their mind, and they're super sensitive to it. So it could take 5 minutes to make the drink, but in the world of a customer who's waiting by the espresso machine, it's actually 10 minutes. And we know it's not, but we don't want to just move them past the register as quickly as possible. You want to do things that allow baristas to breathe. Sometimes you might even have to get off the register and help them steam some milk, and help them pour milk into an ice cup. You can do all this while still engaging the person at the register. And in my experience, when you're joyful, when you're hardworking, when you're acknowledging them, but also doing a task and say, I'll be right with you, even if you just say, I'll be right with you, people are so forgiving. People are so forgiving and gracious about that. This is obviously something that you might need to look at from a workflow perspective. Maybe you need an extra employee. But the fact is that if you don't pace the line, you're going to bury espresso. This is something I saw at America's Best Coffee House, which was a competition I used to run in with Coffee Fest back in the day. It was a team-based competition, and it was a great competition. I'm kind of biased. It was my baby. But we would have 3 people from a shop, and they would divide themselves by cash register, brew bar, and espresso. And almost always you would see, with the exception of the people that did the best, espresso would get buried because cash register was just in their own world. They weren't aware of what was going on around them. And had they been aware, they would have also therefore been concerned about how is the customer going to perceive moving down the line but not getting their drink. So, pacing the line. This is a really critical issue. You need to be able to finesse the interaction, spread out some of the questions that you have about their order, chit-chat a bit, maybe do some of the restocking of pastries or brew another pot of coffee. You can do those things strategically when you know that espresso's having a bit of a hard time keeping up. That way, at least you have a constant. You have something that's predictable. But without that, you just create chaos. So these 6 skills, I think, are foundational. Again, they are number 1, acknowledging, welcoming, and including the guest. Number 2, you have to have product knowledge and preparedness in terms of answering questions about what is on offer in this cafe. Number 3, communication to the customer about their drink and making sure that the communication that you have is at the same time as it's accurate and clarifying is also warm and hospitable. And number 4, communication to the baristas so that you're able to help them successfully complete the order. Number 5, you got to have that peripheral awareness. You got to break out of that station and be aware of what's going on around you. And number 6, use that awareness to pace the line, especially when it's getting super busy in the cafe. You want to have a really great experience lined up for your customers, and these 6 skills are at the foundation of what it takes to work the register really well. The register is an extremely important place for specialty coffee, so let's make it an extremely important priority in the way we train our employees, in what we put in our training literature, and what we talk about, and what we test on, and what we take pride in our shops. So these are the 6 things that I think are foundational for working the register well, and you might have a different list. You might have a different set of skills that need to be really looked at and dialed in on your bar. The whole point of this episode is not so much this list of 6 things, but it's to get you in the mindset more that we need to dial in this experience with focus, with training, testing, and just as much as we would for a barista who wants to make an excellent coffee. Cash register barista needs to make an excellent coffee experience. So I hope that this was a helpful episode for you. If you want the show notes for it, you can go to keystotheshop.com. On the sidebar, there's a place to put your email address, and when you sign up, you'll have the show notes sent to your inbox on a regular basis, and that's really convenient since these are the main takeaways and key points made in each episode, as well as the links and resources mentioned in each episode too. If you want to get in contact with me and talk about the show or training and consultation with Keys to the Shop, you can do so by emailing chris@keystotheshop.com. I look forward to having a conversation with you. And that's it. So thank you so much again for joining me on the show. Always a pleasure to have you along. Thank you for spending your time here today. And as always, I hope that this episode has given you keys to the shop.